I think this may be the worst it's ever been in Portland on night 81 of the protests, and I'm not talking about videos of mass riots and tear gas. I'm talking about what happens when the police don't get involved. And you've probably seen the title of this. I have this post here from the Portland police. Protest complicates police response to assault calls. But this story is haunting. A man in his truck. There's a woman who's with him. A group of far leftists begin smacking her and beating her. He gets out of his vehicle, tries to stop them. That's one video. In another video, we can see that a group of far leftists, Black Lives Matter, whatever you want to call them, begin harassing and assaulting a trans woman, a white trans woman. They steal her backpack and brutally beat her. This trans woman then begs for her stuff back, I believe medication and phone and all that stuff. This man in the truck is seen in a video trying to protect this individual from the angry crowd. The next video we see, his truck is crashed. He's lying on the ground, or he's sitting on the ground, and they're ruthlessly beating him. And the next video we see, he's laying on the ground, covered in blood, out of it. And people just mock him. Some say, don't rob his truck. Some say that's what he gets. The police said they were chasing after his truck. He swerved and crashed. They dragged him out of the vehicle apparently after this, and then brutally beat him. Some would suggest they were trying to straight up kill him. Others did stop it from going too far, but he was transported to a hospital with very serious injuries. And this is the worrying escalation of defund the police. Now, we can talk about riots. We can talk about, people marching through the streets, smashing up windows. But what happens? What happens when after this? Seriously, you can't expect every single night to be just large groups romping around randomly, rioting and looting. Eventually, the police get demoralized. The police give up. Yesterday, there was an article that came out from the Daily Mail of an officer who pulled up to a bunch of protesters and says, "You've won, I'm quitting." They've defunded many police departments. One analysis that was reported on by Fox News shows about 129 departments across the country have been partially defunded. Some have been completely disbanded. In Portland, the state police recently announced a full retreat from the city because the district attorney will not prosecute these extremists. And now we get one of the most brutal and haunting videos I've seen. A man trying to protect a trans woman being brutally beaten within an inch of his life by a group of Black Lives Matter extremists. And I'll tell you, man, I don't think they care about identity. Some people might say, I just know we're going to hear from the left. They're going to say things like, how could it have possibly been Black Lives Matter if, they were attacking a trans woman? Because they don't care about any of those things. They never did. It's a lie. They claim that they're supporting marginalized communities. They're not. They're attacking them. Just look at any one of the videos from Portland where they're screaming racial slurs at everybody. So I'm not surprised by this. I have this story here from the District Herald, also from Fox News. Portland protest turns violent. Brutal assault caught on video. I'm going to read you this, and I'm going to show you some tweets. There's no graphic images. I've removed them. You can find those tweets and images at districtherald.com, and you'll find the story. But I first want to read for you what the police said. At 10:27 p.m., Central Precinct officers responded to a report of an injury accident at Southwest Broadway and Southwest Taylor Street. The report said protesters were chasing the truck before it crashed, and they assaulted the driver after the crash. Officers encountered a hostile crowd, and a squad from the Rapid Response Team responded to help secure the scene while the investigation was underway. The driver was transported to the hospital by ambulance with serious injuries. The incident is under investigation, and no arrests have been made. By about 1 a.m., the majority of the crowd had left the area. No arrests were made, and no CS gas was deployed. No, you can see it in these videos. These lunatics are essentially given carte blanche. The cops are gone. And this is what happens next. Roving bands of extremists beating random people. And I'm not exaggerating. There are videos. There's a video. Andy No tweeted about it. Many others have shared this video where it's a woman being hit, smacked, beaten. And she's saying, I didn't do anything. I was just walking. Doesn't matter. These people don't care about any of this. In Seattle, You actually had Black Lives Matter organizers, NAACP organizers, saying, what are these people even protesting for at this point? Well, I'll tell you what. They've repeatedly said, by any means necessary. So perhaps you should get active and denounce everything we're seeing. But yes, let me show you. Andy No tweeted, watch this to the end to see the type of hate preaching by BLM that is used to radicalize people to violence. This was recorded by @LivesMatter Show a few hours before some BLM protesters went around downtown Portland beating and robbing numerous people. And I said, they keep saying, by any means necessary. And y'all thought they were kidding. In the video, the woman says it over and over again. She says, I'm not joking, by any means necessary. So what do we get? Portland rioters attempt to murder man who intervened in their robbery and assault of white trans person. From the District Herald. I've had to remove some of the graphic images because they're bad. Man lying bloodied in the street, barely moving, twitching, trying to lift his head, like just not there. Some kind of brain injury, obviously. That's what happens when someone gets knocked out, especially for this long. Drew Hernandez says, breaking. After causing a white man to crash his truck in downtown Portland, BLM militants then beat the man and knock him unconscious. Now take a look at this. There's a video of what happened. In this tweet, you can see the man in blue is telling people, like, basically back away. He's on his knees, standing in front of a trans woman. It seems like he's trying to, defend this woman, defend this individual, pushing people back. The video of the trans woman shows them getting physical, constantly stealing things from her, taking, her longboard or backpack, all of these things. The tweet says, before the victim is shown trying to calm down a group of men who stole a transgender woman's bag and skateboard because they didn't like the way she was talking to black men. This man tried to intervene. They brutally beat him. Leading up to the vicious attempted murder, the Black Lives Matter activists were chasing a man away from their protest and assaulting him. A person who appears to be a trans woman holding a skateboard attempted to intervene and get them to leave the man alone. The rioters decided they didn't like the trans woman speaking out against their violence, so they stole her skateboard and backpack before violently attacking her as well. The trans woman was left sobbing on the sidewalk, threatening to commit suicide following the mob attack, stealing the trans woman's backpack. I mean, all of their personal belongings. Drew Hernandez says, here are some of the events that led up to BLM causing a man to crash into a tree tonight in Portland. BLM began to aggressively escort a man from the BLM protest and assaulted him. A witness defended him verbally. Then BLM thugs began to threaten, rob, and physically assault her. The violent mob also attacked another woman who attempted to intervene in their violent attack on the man and several random people who were just walking down the street. The people who were targeted by the mob all appear to be white. Drew Hernandez goes on to mention this as well. That's @Lives Matter Show. That's his Lives Matters. Yes, Lives Matter Show. That's his Twitter handle. The rioter who ran up and punched the man after he had already been brutally beaten to the point of nearly losing consciousness has been identified by 4chan users as Marquise Love, whose Facebook profile lists him as a ramp agent at Portland International Airport. He works as a DJ in the evenings. And there's another tweet. The man is completely unconscious. Get your BA up. They were yelling at him. Some of the most brutal and chilling scenes I have seen yet in Portland. This is where it starts, I don't know, man. They tried to kill this person and there are no police. Police didn't come out. They made no arrests. State police have retreated. Feds are inside the courthouse, not intervening. And I've been saying, man, I know people don't want to hear it, that it's going to get worse because where do you go from here? Well, I'll tell you, I see two very probable paths forward. If the police do nothing, then these people are emboldened and they will continue to violently assault, beat, try to murder. It was the mayor of Portland already said the rioters have tried to murder because they barricaded the exits to a police building and then tried setting it on fire. Now they literally beat a man within an inch of his life, transported to the hospital with serious injuries. If the police do nothing, this is what you get. It will just keep growing from here. However, my fear is if the police do intervene, what will end up happening is it will embolden a bunch of other individuals in Portland who don't pay attention and don't know and just hear rumors about police beating innocent, peaceful protesters. This will rile up the crowds. They'll come out and they'll get aggressive. Now Normally, I would say the police need to come out and just do their job, even if it may spark more protests that may happen. The problem is the district attorney said they will not prosecute even if the individual assaults an officer. So what can the cops do? They make arrests, these people get released, and now you get this. Insane. Absolutely, absolutely nightmarish. Portland marks 81st night of protests Sunday as mother of man shot by police speaks outside Justice Center. You'd think at some point they would say violent riots. They don't. They won't. They'll just keep saying it's a protest. That's the game they will just keep playing. Oregon Live, however, did publish this video to YouTube. Portland police sergeant says protest violence directed at him is lowest point in 18 years. They say Portland's mayor and police chief spent much of Thursday and Friday decrying nightly demonstrations. Demonstrations. Think about that. They just brutally beat several people, random people, nearly killed a man. And they are still saying demonstrations because the media there is protecting them. If the media grew a spine and told the people of Portland the truth, maybe the people there might actually say, we need our cops. Enough of this. But you know what the sad reality is? It's probably that these far left extremists have infiltrated these news organizations and they're lying on purpose to protect their friends and their ideological allies. They say they were decrying nightly demonstrations, riots, that have turned destructive, a surge in shootings and homicides, and other public safety concerns that have gripped the city in recent weeks. In a rare occurrence, cops on the front lines have been permitted to speak out about them. Several rank-and-file officers this week provided first-hand accounts of their work amid heated protests, increasing gun violence, calls for reforms, and budget cuts. Sergeant Brent Maxey said the vitriol and acts of violence directed at him during a pair of demonstrations marked some of the lowest points in his 18 years with the Bureau. Normally, cops aren't allowed to speak up. They have public information officers for a reason. So when it comes to rank and file, when it comes to individuals like this, they normally would just not comment. They've started speaking up. Maybe that's something they should have done for a long time so people realize and better understand these police departments. So this one's on these public information officers or laws or restrictions, because I've seen all too often cops will be doing something and they won't talk and people don't know what's going on or why, and they assume the worst. Maybe the assumption is they're better off saying nothing because they want a cohesive strategy. But we're in the era of social media. Meaning people are going to see a cop doing something, they're going to lie. Think about it this way. If you see a large group of people and they're fighting with cops and the cops won't say anything when people on the camera are yelling, people just assume the cops are the bad guys. The protesters are yelling things like, help, help, we're being repressed. And the cops say nothing. Imagine what would happen if the cops did speak and these protesters were yelling, help, help, we're being repressed. And then a cop said, they've just brutally beat a man within an inch of his life and we're trying to rescue him. We need to get these people out of the way. There's a man dying in front of us. What do you think would happen if that video came out? People might actually go, oh, these far leftists are insane. So maybe it's about time cops start speaking up and saying, they just threw a brick at my face. They just hit a cop in the head. He's got a concussion. There's a man bleeding on the ground. What should we do? We've got to stop this. It doesn't matter in the end, though. You know why? Because the district attorney said they will not prosecute, even if they assault an officer. Within reason. I don't make it seem like they're literally never going to. His exact, phrasing, a paraphrase for him was that they will scrutinize charges, on acknowledging the chaos of a protest environment. Protest environments aren't supposed to be chaotic. It's people marching through the streets with signs. The cops walk alongside them. We've seen this over and over again. Sometimes they'll engage in civil disobedience, which is disruptive, and I respect. They'll get arrested for it. And the cop will walk over and they'll put him in cuffs and they'll calmly walk to the vehicle and they'll get their press attention. There'll be big news and it benefits their cause. We've seen it over and over and over again. Think about like the March for Our Lives or the Women's March. These big mass assemblies made headlines. Then people heard about the idea and they entertained it. But these violent riots? No, man, this is just getting crazy. Take a look at this. Late night, North Portland drivers take over an industrial park. I actually saw this tweet from a local Portland journalist saying that across the city, people are just doing donuts. They're peeling out. The city is becoming the Wild West once again. Well, I don't know if Oregon was ever necessarily the Wild West. I guess you can call it, It's rainy, so it's not how we imagine the Wild West, but kind of. That's why the Portland mayor is also the police commissioner, apparently, because it's a remnant of the old, ways of the Wild West. Well, of course, we had violent riots in Seattle once again. Several officers have been injured and arrests made on 4th Avenue. This has been declared a riot. Officers taking projectiles and fireworks, please stay out of the area. We will update with additional information when available. It just keeps happening. Now, listen. Some people have criticized me because they don't like the fact that I maybe am overly pessimistic in the sense that I'm like, things are going to get worse, right? Was I wrong? I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I made a prediction like hard lottery numbers. I said this the other day. It's not like I'm saying, 12, 59, 32, 7. I'm literally saying, hey, if this happens, then we might see this next. And I think it's very likely. And we did. Earlier this year, I said, I think, there will be riots. People are going to lose their minds. I didn't say for this reason, mind you, but I think this is absolutely a factor. And it was said during the peak of the George Floyd riots, a big contributing factor was the fact that people were fed up. They were tired. They were locked up. They were angry. Yeah. And then we saw in Chicago the mass looting last week. And what did they say? Well, one of the Black Lives Matter organizers said that they need to, however they can get food, they need to eat. And there it is. The lockdown, the lack of income, the threat of eviction. They're going around and looting because they want money. They want money. That's what they were doing. In Portland, they're just crazy and angry, and there's no one there to stop them. The reason I bring this up, I typically do, because I bring you now to a continuation of that ongoing escalation. Protesters' arrest leads to crowd forming at Pittsburgh mayor's home. Come on, man. I said, how long ago? How long until they come to the neighborhoods and come to your house? And people still said, oh, please, Tim, what do you know? And then they literally started going to people's homes. They went to Cassandra Fairbanks' home. They fired fireworks at it, reportedly gunshots as well. They've also gone to Tucker Carlson's home in the past. But we're talking about the escalation, right? So we've seen it. I didn't just randomly say, what if they go to your house? No, I'm like, they went to Tucker's house. Why wouldn't, with all this escalation, why wouldn't they start going to other people's homes? And they did. And they've attacked local residents on more than one occasion. I'm not kidding. In a residential neighborhood yesterday, a video of a man being shoved to the ground, people getting into fights. It's what happens when they have numbers and weapons. Granted, we've seen in Colorado, locals push back. They started going to the homes of politicians. They started going to the homes, to the house of, say, the police chief in Seattle, who's now retiring because of all the chaos. And here we go. Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto said he has serious concerns over the tactics used in the arrest of a 25-year-old protester on Saturday, after the detention led a crowd of demonstrators showing up at the mayor's home on Sunday. Matthew Cartier, 25, was arrested on Saturday at a Black Lives Matter protest. A video cited by CBS News showed armed officers putting Cartier into an unmarked van. Police say he interfered with public safety. Local media footage showed a crowd gathering outside Peduto's home on Sunday, carrying signs and slogans such as "Defund the police." The crowd of about 150 marched to outside the mayor's house after rallying in Mellon Park, according to local media. Police said Cartier was arrested because he stepped in front of cars, tried to direct traffic, and blocked an intersection used for the hospital and the University of Pittsburgh. He was charged with failure to disperse. Quote, "We did it with the tactics and tools necessary to do it safely for not only the individual being arrested, but for the public at large and for the protesters themselves," an official said. The ACLU said on Sunday that officers were in clear violation of their own guidelines. The ACLU of Pennsylvania has never suggested that the snatch and stash arrests of peaceful demonstrators is ever acceptable. Just no, absolutely not. But I'll tell you what. When they showed up to your house, Mayor, there are no cops around. What would stop them from, say, I don't know, kicking your door in and then running up to your house and then breaking in and ransacking it? Nothing. Would any of them be caught and arrested? Maybe some of them, but probably not by your police, especially not in places like Seattle where this is going on. Listen, the way we see mob mentality work is that because everyone adds 1 degree to the chaos, it rapidly accelerates. You take one person who's angry and waving a sign and you put him in front of a house, they won't do anything. They'll stand there yelling. 2 people, stand there yelling. At a certain point, you have enough people. One person walks up and looks in the front door. Someone else sees him walking up and follows him, and then everyone runs up behind them because now the crowd is doing it. They see him going to the door, so someone else runs to the door. Eventually, someone kicks the door, breaks it open, and runs away. 1 degree at a time. And eventually, I would not be surprised if they're actually breaking into people's homes. It could go the other way. Things could start to calm down. But the reason why I'm leaning towards there being escalation is simply because we keep seeing more, not less. Not every night, something more. In Portland, they almost murdered a guy. So it's more and more and more. Well, I tell you what, I only see one opportunity. I mean it. There's one opportunity to make this all end. Trump sends warning to NYC's de Blasio after another bloody weekend. New York City has seen an increase in shootings in 2020. Trump sends another warning. Trump could invoke the Insurrection Act. He could deploy police and other federal officers to these streets like they've accused him of doing, which he never did. He could do it. He could put an end to it. I don't think he will, though, because they keep telling him not to do it and they refuse. So the people in these cities get to deal with it. It is not the Fed's jurisdiction necessarily. He could invoke the Insurrection Act and put an end to this overnight. But for now, he's leaving it to the states and the cities. And guess what? The people who live there voted for these Democrats, and now they're getting all of the violence that's wreaking havoc in these cities. And they're going to need to vote for someone else to stop this. Congratulations, Portland, on your new district attorney who won't prosecute these people so the police are retreating. I certainly wouldn't want to live there. But I will say, I think this will wake people up, and perhaps now they will all go and vote for Republicans and Trump. And it's funny. It's funny because the only thing at this point that matters to me, all the other political issues, all the wedge issues are pushed off in the corner because we are facing an existential threat. People destroying cities, burning buildings, attacking and trying to murder people. Okay, then if the only people are going to get it done are the Republicans, that's my issue right now. That's it. The riots, make them stop. The Democrats, you won't, then we need someone else to do it. We'll see how this plays out. I got more segments coming up for you later in the day. The next segment will be at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.